The storm began not with thunder, but with mathematics. In the third week of March 1943, reports flooded into Abwehr headquarters from 17 different intelligence networks spanning 3 continents. Each report, arriving through separate channels, some by diplomatic pouch, others by coded radio transmission, still others hand-carried by couriers who'd crossed U-boat-infested waters, told the same impossible story. Canaris spread them across the conference table in his private office like a card dealer revealing a losing hand. Mexico City, Stockholm, Lisbon, Madrid, Buenos Aires, even Zurich. The sources couldn't have coordinated. A Swedish steel magnate who'd toured American factories. A Spanish diplomat's casual observation at a Washington cocktail party. Intercepted correspondence between Ford engineers and Brazilian industrialists. Photographic reconnaissance from a Luftwaffe pilot who'd defected in 1941 and whose pre-war intelligence was only now being re-evaluated. Every single source confirmed Willow Run was producing one B-24 Liberator every 50 minutes. "It's mathematically impossible," Oberstleutnant Ritter said, yet his voice carried no conviction. He'd done the calculations himself 3 times. Germany's entire aircraft industry, all our factories combined, produces approximately 1,000 heavy bombers per year. This single American plant would produce... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Canaris finished for him. 10,000 bombers annually, from one factory. The silence that followed was broken only by the ticking of the office clock. Each second, another rivet driven into a bomber somewhere in Michigan. Major Heinz placed a decoded telegram on top of the pile. "Herr Admiral, this arrived 1 hour ago from our attaché in Stockholm. Swedish businessman Lars Eklund toured the facility last month as part of a neutral trade delegation. He estimates the main assembly building at," Heinz swallowed hard, "3.5 million square feet. He describes clouds forming inside due to temperature differentials. Clouds, sir, inside a building." Before we continue, click that subscribe button, like this video, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It brings me great joy knowing that these war stories and lessons get to people all over the world. Your support helps us bring more thrilling war stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Now let's get back to the story. Canaris walked to the window. Outside, Berlin's streets crawled with military traffic. Trucks carrying supplies, staff cars ferrying officers between ministries. The machinery of the Third Reich still functioning, still confident. He turned back to his officers. "Gentlemen, I need you to understand what we're looking at." His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the windowsill. "This is not an intelligence failure. Our networks have performed brilliantly. 17 independent confirmations. That's unprecedented verification." "Then what is it, Herr Admiral?" Canaris looked at the reports again, at the numbers that kept appearing. 42,000 workers, 1 mile of assembly line, 1.5 million parts per aircraft, 50 minutes per bomber. "It's an arithmetic problem," he said quietly, "and arithmetic cannot be negotiated with, cannot be intimidated, cannot be defeated by willpower or ideology." He picked up the summary report he would have to present to Göring. If these numbers are accurate, and 17 sources suggest they are, then this war is already over. Germany is not losing to American pilots or American tactics. We are losing to American mathematics. We are being defeated by production capacity we cannot match, cannot counter, and apparently, his voice dropped to barely a whisper, cannot even believe exists. Ritter spoke carefully. "Do we present this to the Reichsmarshal?" Canaris stared at the report. "Yes, and he will laugh at us, and the bombers will keep coming." Outside, Berlin's church bells rang the hour. In Michigan, another bomber rolled off the line. The intelligence didn't trickle in. It poured. By April 1943, Canaris's office had become an archive of the impossible. File cabinets overflowed with reports, photographs, technical specifications, and eyewitness accounts, each one adding another layer of detail to a picture German leadership refused to see. From Mexico City, Georg Nicholas's network provided the most visceral descriptions. American businessman Harold Morrison, the oil executive who'd toured Willow Run in January, had become unwittingly talkative after his third drink at the German-Mexican Commerce Association. Wolfgang Blau's transcription filled 14 pages, but one passage haunted Canaris. The building is so enormous that weather systems form inside it. Actual clouds. During morning shifts, when the workers first arrive and body heat meets cold Michigan air, condensation creates fog banks along the assembly line. Sometimes it rains indoors. They had to install ventilation systems just to manage the climate inside their own factory. Canaris had read that paragraph 5 times. He'd built U-boat pens, inspected aircraft hangars, toured ammunition plants. He'd never heard of a building so large it created its own weather. Morrison's account continued with details that should have been impossible. Women, thousands of them, perform tasks we would consider exclusively male work. I watched a colored woman, couldn't have been more than 25 years old, installing hydraulic lines in a bomber's tail section. Her hands moved with absolute precision. The foreman told me she'd been a seamstress 3 months ago. Now she's responsible for flight control systems that will carry 10 men across the Atlantic. From Stockholm, the Swedish industrialist Lars Eklund provided technical specifications that Ritter's engineers verified against captured B-24 blueprints. The assembly line moves at precisely 60 inches per hour. Eklund reported to his business partners. Correspondence Swedish intelligence passed to German contacts. I timed it myself with a stopwatch. Every 100 feet of travel represents another hour of assembly. Workers stand at fixed stations. The bomber comes to them. Wing sections arrive on overhead conveyors. Fuselages travel on massive dollies. Everything converges with choreographed precision. But it was Eklund's observation about the workforce that struck deepest. I counted at least 15,000 women on the floor during day shift. Not secretaries or nurses. Welders, riveters, electricians, inspectors. Many are Negro women. I watched one crew of 6 colored women install an entire engine mount assembly. The supervisor told me their crew holds the plant record for 0 defects, over 60 consecutive units. Canaris had shown that passage to Ritter. How does this compare to our workforce composition? Ritter's answer was careful. Herr Admiral, our aircraft factories employ women, but primarily in light assembly and administrative roles. We have ideological restrictions on their placement in technical positions. As for non-Aryan workers, he didn't need to finish. From Madrid, Colonel Ungria's intelligence provided the strategic vision. Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief, had spoken with surprising candor about the plant's philosophy. Ungria's report, transmitted through Spanish diplomatic channels, included extensive quotations. Sorensen explained their training methodology. Ungria wrote, "They built an apprentice school that processes 8,000 workers weekly. That's not a typing error, 8,000 per week. The school operates on 3 shifts. Students receive 160 hours of training, then move directly to the production line." Sorensen claimed they can take a housewife with no industrial experience and have her building bomber components within 2 weeks. When I expressed skepticism, Sorensen showed me productivity data. Women workers, he insisted, demonstrate superior performance in tasks requiring fine motor control and sustained attention. Smaller hands for tight spaces, more patience for repetitive precision, he said. The plant manager told me Their female workforce has 23% fewer defects than male workers in comparable roles. Ungria had added his own analysis. If accurate, this represents a mobilization of human capital Germany cannot match. We have removed women from workforce consideration. We have eliminated entire populations from productive capacity based on racial classification. The Americans are weaponizing diversity itself. The contrast haunted Canaris. In Germany, Jewish scientists had been expelled, their laboratories shuttered. Slavic laborers worked under guard, sabotaging production when possible. Women were told their duty was Kinder, Küche, Kirche, children, kitchen, church, not building bombers. Meanwhile, in Michigan, former seamstresses installed hydraulic systems. African-American workers operated precision machinery. Women welders joined aluminum components that would fly at 25,000 feet. The reports kept coming. A Brazilian steel supplier described Ford's material requirements. They consume more aluminum in 1 week than our entire national production in 1 year. A Swiss banker detailed the financial scale. Ford invested $90 million in the Willow Run plant. The building alone consumed more steel than most European cities use annually. An Argentine shipping agent noted the logistics. Trainloads of components arrive daily. 20 to 30 freight cars every single day. The factory has its own rail system inside the building. Each report, cross-referenced and verified, built an undeniable picture. America had industrialized warfare itself. They'd applied mass production, perfected on Model T assembly lines, to the most complex machine ever built. And they'd done it by embracing the very diversity Nazi ideology rejected. Canaris compiled everything into a master report. 247 pages of documentation, 17 independent sources, technical specifications verified by Luftwaffe engineers. The mathematics were irrefutable. The question was whether mathematics mattered more than ideology. He was about to find out. April 23, 1943, Karen Hall, Göring's estate. Hermann Göring, Reichsmarschall of the Greater German Reich, stood before a roaring fireplace wearing a silk dressing gown embroidered with his family crest. He'd been examining medieval tapestries when Canaris arrived with his briefcase of damnation. "So Canaris," Göring said, not bothering to turn around, "you've brought me fairy tales from America?" Canaris placed the master report on the marble table. 247 pages, 17 sources, photographs, technical specifications, mathematical projections. Herr Reichsmarschall, the intelligence is conclusive. Ford's Willow Run plant is producing 1 bomber every 50 minutes. Yes, I've heard this fantasy. Göring finally turned, his face flushed from cognac and irritation. "Do you know what I think, Admiral?" He didn't wait for an answer. He picked up the photographs. Grainy images of the assembly line, captured by Swedish industrialists with hidden cameras, and laughed. Actually laughed. Wooden mock-ups, stage props for American propaganda films. He tossed the photos back onto the table. The Americans are clever, I'll give them that. They build full-scale models, photograph them from impressive angles, feed the images to neutral businessmen who eagerly report back to German intelligence. And here you are, dancing to their tune. Herr Reichsmarschall, we have 17 independent— 17 fools, you mean? Göring's voice cracked like thunder. Americans build refrigerators and automobiles, cheap consumer goods for their mongrel masses. They lack the Prussian discipline, the engineering excellence, the racial will to build military aircraft. Their factories are run by Jews and managed by democracy, a recipe for chaos, not precision. Canaris tried once more. The mathematics, damn your mathematics! Göring seized the report and hurled it into the fireplace. Pages curled and blackened. I will not have defeatist propaganda presented as intelligence. The Führer needs confidence, not cowardice masquerading as analysis. May 1st, 1943. Wolf's Lair, East Prussia. Hitler's reaction was worse. He'd listened to Canaris's presentation in silence, those pale eyes fixed on the intelligence summary. When Canaris finished, Hitler stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. This is what German intelligence has become? Repeating enemy propaganda verbatim? His voice started low, building to a shriek. A mongrel democracy with Negro workers and Jewish financiers cannot outproduce the German Reich. It is biologically impossible. Mein Führer, the sources are compromised. All of them. Hitler's fist slammed the table. This is exactly what the enemy wants, to demoralize us with impossible claims. They know they cannot defeat us militarily, so they attack our will with lies. Field Marshal Keitel, standing beside Hitler, nodded vigorously. Obviously falsified intelligence, mein Führer. Clearly designed to— If, Hitler interrupted, his voice dropping to something more dangerous than shouting. If I hear one more report suggesting American production superiority, I will consider it treason. Do you understand, Admiral? Defeatism. Punishable by death. Canaris understood perfectly. That night, Canaris's office. The film canisters sat on his desk. Motion picture footage, smuggled from Mexico, showing the assembly line in operation. Actual, undeniable visual proof. Canaris held one canister up to the light, then walked to his office fireplace. The first reel caught quickly, celluloid melting into black smoke. Then the second, the third. He watched evidence worth more than gold turn to ash. Major Heinz appeared in the doorway. Herr Admiral, we never received these films. Major, they never existed. Do you understand? Heinz's face went pale. He understood. Presenting truth to men committed to lies wasn't intelligence work. It was suicide. Should we stop gathering data on American production? Canaris stared into the flames, consuming the last proof of reality. No, keep gathering it. Keep filing it. Keep documenting it. His voice was hollow. So that when the bombers come, when thousands of them fill our skies, someone will know we tried to warn them. And when will they come, Herr Admiral? Canaris turned from the fireplace. Major, they're already in the air. February 20th, 1944. Big week begins. The sky over Brunswick turned black at 11:47 a.m., not with clouds, with bombers. Hauptmann Franz Steigler climbing through 20,000 feet in his Messerschmitt Bf 109. Keyed his radio with trembling hands. Bomber formation sighted. Estimate. Estimate. He couldn't finish. The numbers his eyes were seeing couldn't be real. His wingman's voice crackled through the static. Mein Gott, how many? Stigler tried to count. Boxes of 6, formations of 18, wings of 54, layer upon layer, stacked from 18,000 to 28,000 feet. The formation stretched from horizon to horizon, a geometric impossibility made of aluminum and high explosives. Hundreds, he finally radioed. I count hundreds of heavy bombers. 4 engine types, B-24s and B-17s. They're everywhere. Ground control came back immediately. Confirm your count, Hauptmann. Did you say dozens? Hundreds! Stigler's voice cracked. The entire sky is bombers. Where is our Air Force? Where is the Luftwaffe? The answer was simple. Though no one wanted to say it, the Luftwaffe was dying, outnumbered, outproduced, drowning in a tide of American steel that Goering had declared impossible. Over the next 6 days, history would call it Big Week, the mathematics Admiral Canaris had tried to warn them about became devastatingly, undeniably real. Day 1. 1,000 heavy bombers struck aircraft factories across Germany. Messerschmitt plants in Regensburg, Focke-Wulf facilities in Tutow, ball-bearing factories in Schweinfurt. The Americans came in daylight, in formations so massive they created their own weather systems, contrails forming artificial clouds visible for 100 miles. Day 2, 900 bombers returned. Luftwaffe fighters scrambled to intercept. Me-109s, FW-190s, even experimental jets thrown into desperate combat. German pilots shot down 64 American bombers. It felt like a victory until they saw the next day's formations, undiminished. The Americans had replaced their losses overnight. Day 3. Oberleutnant Heinz Knock, a decorated ace with 33 kills, recorded in his diary, encountered B-24 formation over Leipzig, counted 87 bombers in single combat box, attacked from above, shot down one Liberator. As I turned away, I looked back. The formation hadn't even adjusted. One bomber gone, replaced immediately by another from reserve. It's like shooting into the ocean and expecting the tide to stop. Day 4. Major Egon Mayer, who'd pioneered head-on fighter attacks against bomber formations, led his Gruppe against a raid targeting Gotha. His after-action report was clinical in its despair. Today's bomber stream, estimated 850 to 900 heavy bombers with 600-plus fighter escorts. Our entire Gruppe, 12 aircraft, engaged approximately 160 bombers. We destroyed 4. The mathematical impossibility of this situation requires no elaboration. We are being buried by production capacity. Day 5. Luftwaffe High Command received reports from every fighter Gruppe in Germany. The pattern was identical everywhere. Massive formations, immediate replacements for losses, fighter escorts so numerous that German pilots were being shot down before they could even reach the bombers. General Adolf Galland, commander of Luftwaffe fighters, requested an emergency meeting with Göring. Herr Reichsmarschall, we cannot sustain these losses. The Americans are sending formations of 800, 900, even 1,000 bombers. Our intelligence reports from 1943, the Ford factory. They were accurate. We are facing production capacity. We cannot— Enough! Göring slammed his marshal's baton on the table. I will not hear defeatist. They built a factory that creates its own weather. Galland's voice rose to match Göring's. They trained women to build bombers. They mobilized their entire population. And we laughed at the intelligence. We called it propaganda. The room went silent. Galland continued, quieter now, more deadly. Last year, Admiral Canaris brought you proof. You burned it. This year, that proof is burning us. Day 6. February 25, 1944. The final raid of Big Week struck Regensburg and Augsburg. 1,300 American bombers, the largest formation yet assembled, escorted by 800 fighters. Luftwaffe pilot Robert Basie Weiss, scrambling his FW-190 from Herzogenaurach, later described the moment in letters that survived the war. I climbed through broken clouds at 15,000 feet and emerged into sunlight. The entire western sky was aluminum, not clouds, not formations, just metal. Thousands of aircraft, their contrails weaving a blanket across the stratosphere. I thought of Vikings describing their vision of Valhalla, endless warriors covering the horizon. Except these warriors were machines, American machines, built by women in Michigan, built by the very people we were told could never match German efficiency. I fired my cannons until empty, hit nothing, returned to base, found it cratered by bombs, landed on a highway instead. That night, I remembered stories from older pilots about a German admiral who'd warned us this was coming, who'd shown photographs and reports, who'd been called a liar and a defeatist. He wasn't defeatist, he was just counting. By week's end, the Americans had flown 3,800 bomber sorties and 3,673 fighter sorties. German aircraft production facilities lay in ruins. The Luftwaffe had lost nearly 500 aircraft, including irreplaceable experienced pilots, in 6 days. But the numbers that truly mattered were simpler. In February 1944, Willow Run alone produced 432 B-24 Liberators, one every 51 minutes, exactly as Canaris's intelligence had predicted. German factories, working at maximum capacity with slave labor and round-the-clock shifts, produced 1,016 fighters that same month, across the entire Reich. The arithmetic had been there all along. They just refused to believe it until it blocked out the sun. May 23, 1945, Flensburg, Germany. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris never saw the war's end. He'd been arrested in July 1944, implicated in the plot to assassinate Hitler. Imprisoned at Flossenburg concentration camp, he was executed by slow strangulation on April 9, 1945, 21 days before Hitler's suicide, 28 days before Germany's surrender. His final intelligence report, dated February 1945 and smuggled out by a sympathetic guard, was discovered in 1947 in a sealed envelope marked "For historical record only." It contained one sentence: "Germany dies not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of wisdom to believe it." June 1945. Interrogation Center, Wiesbaden. Hermann Göring sat across from American intelligence officers, stripped of medals and silk robes. His hands trembled as they presented production records. 18,482 B-24 Liberators from Willow Run alone. Peak production, one bomber every 53 minutes. The photographs he'd called wooden mock-ups were real. The reports he'd burned were accurate. The mathematics he'd mocked were irrefutable. "Why didn't you believe your own intelligence?" the American colonel asked. Göring stared at the numbers. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "Because believing it would have meant everything we stood for was a lie. That our racial theories were false. That people we called inferior could outthink us, outwork us, outproduce us." He looked up. It was easier to believe the entire world was lying than to believe we were lying to ourselves. August 1945. British Intelligence Debriefing. Oberstleutnant Nicholas Ritter. The officer who'd analyzed Canaris's intelligence sat in a borrowed suit. The British wanted to understand the failure. "You had accurate information for 2 years, the major said. 17 sources. Why couldn't you act on it?" Ritter lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "We couldn't act because the information contradicted Nazi ideology's foundation. When evidence proved Americans could outproduce us using women, Negroes, and Jews, the very people we'd eliminated, it wasn't just bad news. It was heresy. So you ignored reality? We rejected it. We chose ideology over arithmetic." His voice hardened. "And arithmetic doesn't negotiate. What should you have done? The moment we received Canaris's report in March 1943, we should have sued for peace. The war was mathematically over. Everything after was just momentum carrying us toward inevitable defeat." He crushed out his cigarette. "We were drowning in truth, Major. We had lifeboats made of accurate intelligence. We chose to drown rather than admit we'd been wrong." September 1945. Nuremberg Preliminary Testimony. General Adolf Galland's statement entered the tribunal record. "By February 1944, I watched formations of 800 to 1,000 bombers darken the sky. I counted them from my cockpit. They weren't propaganda. They were real. Built in the factory we'd been told didn't exist, by workers we'd been told were incompetent." After the war, I obtained American records. Everything Canaris reported in 1943 was understated. The Americans exceeded their own projections. We hadn't just ignored accurate intelligence, we'd ignored intelligence that was too conservative. Truth ignored doesn't disappear. It accumulates, it compounds, it comes due, and when it does, The interest is paid in blood and ruin. The final verdict. Over 18,000 B-24 Liberators rolled off American assembly lines. Germany produced 36,000 aircraft total, all types, in the same period. The mathematics were elegant in their brutality. One factory, one nation's entire air force. Canaris had been right in March 1943. The war was over. Germany just took 2 more years to accept it, and millions died in that interval between truth and acceptance. Epilogue. History's Judgment. Willow Run, 1945. The last bomber rolls out. Women remove coveralls. African-American workers clock out. The building falls silent. One worker, a former seamstress named Rose, picks up her lunch pail and looks back at the assembly line. She doesn't know about burned intelligence reports or mocked photographs. She just knows she helped build 8,685 bombers. She just knows that democracy, for all its messy chaos, had outproduced dictatorship. She just knows the math worked. And mathematics, in the end, doesn't care about ideology. It only cares about truth. Truth ignored doesn't fade. It waits. And when it arrives absolutely.